G'day, Kate Fantanell, Lady Liberty Australia here at the Libertarian Party National Convention, and I'm so excited. I'm sitting here with one of my inspirations. He's a fighter for the Second Amendment and gun rights in America, Maj Toure. How are ya?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. So, you've got your organisation, Black Guns Matter, which is a clever take on Black Lives Matter. Tell us a little bit about that and what you're doing for gun rights in America.
Just peeling back to a constitutional perspective. You know, the Bill of Rights is very, very clear. The Second Amendment being the second one of those 10. Getting away from that and adding 20,000 more unconstitutional statutes on top of that is where our work comes in at. Let's inform the people. Let's get them back to a constitutional perspective and kind of like push back against any of those unconstitutional situations. We have a focus of urban America because that's where the concentration of, this dense population, we want these people controlled. We don't want these people to have the means to defend themselves from government overreach. And if I was a supervillain, I understand it. I get the play. I get why they run that play. But our job is to call a blitz. Our job is to go, no, this isn't how we're doing this. This isn't constitutional. This is in opposition to our human rights. And so that's what our work is with Black Guns Matter. And it expands into health and fitness, because it's tell you about guns. It's like, maybe you need to run. Maybe you need to be in shape. Maybe you need to be able to, run, shoot, and get away, right? Yeah. So then it goes into the conversation about civics. It goes into the conversation about what are you putting in your body, your thought process about, mental focus. All of these things become satellites around the Second Amendment, around firearms ownership, because you want to be a more refined individual. And those other orbiters are the way that we do that. And that ties into our other work with the Solutionary Center. We have a community center in Philadelphia where people can come yoga, just use the Wi-Fi, right? Learn to sew, Spanish, phlebotomy, all of the other different types of classes that we do there. But all of the classes have a holistic thought process of making sure that we are creating well-rounded individuals and sovereign beings that can add value to their communities.
You've also said that all gun control is racist. Now, in Australia, we did have the situation that Indigenous Australians weren't allowed to own firearms for an amount of time. Now it's the other way, and they have more rights to own firearms than other Australians. In the wars, the German and Italians were not allowed to own guns. So is that still a thing that you talk about, that all gun control is racist?
It is. And just because the race of the person shifts from one race to the other, it's still a race-based thought process. And, state agents will always use the other to justify removing human rights from that other, so-called other. So we definitely talk about it. And I usually give a very crude example, because some people, especially here, in the States, will say, well, it's not racist because white folks, I get it back then, but white folks have to fill out a 4473, which is the federal form. They have to fill it out too. And I say, okay, well, it just went from being racist to back to unconstitutional. And it's still, the outcomes are still impacting, communities of color for their terms. Communities of color, the impact on the charges, the conviction, the sentencing, all of those are larger than other folks for a supposed constitutional right. So the crude example that I normally give is, okay, if I was a rapist, and to the women that are watching, please sit through this. This is a little brutal. If I was a rapist and I chose one group of women to rape, I'm still a rapist. If I include other women, that doesn't somehow make it better. Right? It's, I'm only raping white women. I'm only raping black women. I'm only raping Asian women. When someone rapes your human rights, your constitutional rights, you are born with these rights to defend yourself from rapists, from tyrannical governments, from criminals. So when a state agency would say, we only want this group to have a thing, this group, it is not a advancement. It is just further degradation. It is this person going from disrespecting and violating this group to violating this group to violating this group. And the only people that they would want to have those human rights respected are their people, meaning agents of the state, because the overall goal is for the state to have the monopoly of violence. And so, crude example, but it gets to the point. I don't care if, it started as indigenous melanated Australians were initially the folks, and now that they're right, we're going to give these rights or respect the rights that this group has. We're going to try to disrespect this group. And that's what the state does. It plays the other against the other at different times. So yes, we still talk about it, and we give it a more robust understanding in changing people's view of how they look at that.
In Australia, we do not have the legal, practical right to self-defense. I cannot even use pepper spray to defend myself. We are told as women, as everyone in Australia, if you are being attacked, you have to call the police. There is equal force laws, which is a bit of a grey area. Like if a bigger guy like you comes at me and I punch you, it's not equal force, but I can't use any weapon to defend myself. What do you think of that as an American who has the right to bear arms?
I think that the frustration, in that sense, this is going to sound a bit sexist. I'm more so thinking about the women in that conversation.
Yeah, but even elderly men as well,
that
or
too.
Disabled.
Right. I just think that's wild hearing you say that. Like that thought process that, again, if I'm a bigger guy is trying to violently accost you, would you catch a case, like a charge? Like,
yes. If I used my firearm and shot the person, I would be charged with murder. And they would be charged with attempted assault.
Is it based on, like, what if he's really trying to brutalize?
They don't care. We do not have the right to use lethal means for self-defense in Australia.
That is wild.
Yes.
No, now a part of me would say this is a conundrum because you love your home, you love your country, and this thought process that I should just, because some people will say that, they'll say, well, you should just leave. It's like, leave everything that I know and I love. Not saying that the world isn't our home. I am saying that I happen to live and love my family and friends in Australia.
But I hate my government.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think the answer that may be uncomfortable for some people to hear is you guys need a revolution in that regard.
Yes, that's what I've been saying as well.
Yeah. It needs to be like, I want to go back on something that you said. You do have the right to do it. Your government is attempting to not respect your human right. And that's the mentality shift that I think needs to happen. The general public of Australians need to say, we have a human right granted by the Creator, whether you call it God, Allah, Buddha, Jesus, doesn't matter. We have a human, God-given, at birth right to defend ourselves. A gazelle will not ask for a license to defend itself from a lion trying to eat it. So I think that sounds like revolution time. Was it always that way?
It's always been that way.
Wow.
And I've said when I'm arguing for this, the right to life extends to the right to protect your life and your family's life. That we are still, Australia has become a nation reliant on the state. That's how they've made us. When they took away our guns in 1996, well, they've made it very hard to get a gun. In my home state of Western Australia, they've just put limits on how many firearms you can own. You can only own 5, and you have to prove why you want to own each gun. They are also looking at your social media for your views, attitudes, and opinions to determine if you can be trusted to have a gun. They are bringing in mandatory mental health checks, mandatory doctor's checks where they can get your information from your doctor just to make sure. That is what they are doing in Australia. 1996 was bad enough. Since then, the shooting organisations have not defended our rights at all, and we are now at the point where we are seeing disarmament again, and people just don't seem to understand because Australians don't see firearms as a symbol of liberty. I do, and libertarians do, but there are not enough of us. That's why I respect your work in getting out in the community, and we need more people like you in Australia.
I think that you got to have crude examples that to give people something to think about. I think, from my understanding, Australia is very, generally could be peaceful or
Yeah, we're
calming.
very laid back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that level of calm, which is a good thing, can turn into apathy and not having a distrust for government.
Yes. Even after everything they did
Right.
to us during the last few years
Right.
with COVID.
So it becomes like there needs to be extreme examples explained to politicians, and if I was in that predicament, I would 100% be advocating to get behind a candidate that would be in alignment with more of those liberties.
Yes.
Because if not, it doesn't make sense. Like I want to. What is the crime? So, what are the rules as it relates to just firearms ownership and carry?
Can't carry. No
Get the
carry.
fuck out.
And you have to store your gun in a safe in Australia and the magazine separate. You cannot carry a gun with you. And if you're carrying it in a car, you carry it locked up in a steel box.
Yeah.
You can only use it to go hunting or to the range. You can't have it with you for any other reason. It is so restrictive, so controlled. And the ironic thing is firearm owners are the most peaceful people in our
Yep.
societies because we have to be to keep our license.
Right.
If we get too many speeding fines, we can lose our firearms.
Really?
But the media and the government portray us as a threat. We are treated as potential criminals just because we own firearms. Because the culture of Australia has been changed by governments. They do not respect our hunting cultures. They do not respect that we are top shooters in the world.
Right.
And they just do not want us to have firearms. And it's such a hard battle because we don't have the Second Amendment. We don't have people that understand firearms. A lot of Australians probably haven't even seen a gun, or they see it from the movies.
Yeah.
And that's where they're getting their information from. That's what we're up against in Australia.
When you said 1996, what happened in 96 that... Because it seems to me like that was a pivotal point.
That was the turning point. There was a massacre in Tasmania where 35 people were shot and killed at Port Arthur by a criminally insane man who was known to police. He ended up getting one of his guns, which was handed back in a previous buyback. So the Victorian police lost the gun, which was used in this shooting. And they used that. The government was sitting on these laws already written and just needed one incident to control the people and say, we need to take away the guns because less guns equals a safer society. And Australians genuinely believe that.
Nah, bro. On one hand, my unnatural reaction is to say, get out of there because of...
That's why I want to move to America.
Right. But, I mean, like, to say that, though, that would be like me saying...
It's not giving up, though. It's coming here and
no,
then
but
going
yes,
back and educating
yes
them.
and
It's
no.
yeah.
Yes and no. I'll say this because this happens a lot of times in urban communities where there may be, or any type of community, rural or urban, let's use those. A community where there's a person that becomes more intelligent and more rich, right, or wealthy. Usually that person leaves and they take their brains and they take their wallet, right? So now this community that needs your intelligence and your resources does not have it. Now, you love your community and you're not trying to turn your back on it, but they almost need you to stay there to continue to fight. The asking of someone to leave is usually based on, we know that how you feel and you want to have the means. The people that aren't even aware of this, they're not even feeling how you're feeling. However, if you leave, it's more difficult for you to inspire them, right? Unless you leave, travel, show, come back all of the time.
Yes.
But like a lot of times when people say that, they mean like move out, like don't be here, get out of there. But if we say that, this is what happens usually in conservative and liberty circles in America. They'll say New York is a lost cause, California is a lost cause, New Jersey is a lost cause. One, it's not true, as evidenced by yesterday in Trump and his Donald Trump having this rally in the Bronx. New York is supposedly a blue city, but tens of thousands of people show up for this red candidate. My point in saying that is, you got to stay in the fight. You have to. Yours is a cause of education and information. Yours is a cause of showcasing how government is overreaching to the general public, and by planting those seeds, the people that grow from that, those people become the politicians or public servants that are like, nah, we kind of want to do the Second Amendment thing. That's the only way kind of like out of that, other than armed revolution. And you know, violence is usually the answer when it's the answer. Getting somebody's moral compass onto where that answer becomes is different, because for somebody like myself, I believe in you should cut encroachment very early. And that may be something violent, but to other people, they're like, yo, let's give it a little bit more, you know, a little more time. But running isn't necessarily the answer. Running to get information and bringing it back is more of the answer in that space. Always like this?
Yes, in my lifetime. I remember 96, my father had to give back guns, and he was so upset because he said, I'm a law-abiding person, I haven't hurt anyone, and it was just devastating, and that memory stuck in my brain forever, and that's why I'm so passionate about the fight. Also, we've had bans on higher caliber firearms in Western Australia, which actually saw a number of veterans, returned servicemen, disarmed of their long-range rifles by the state because of this high caliber ban, and they've reached out to me and they are devastated because that's what they use. They go to the range to talk about what they saw in the war, and they've just had their guns taken off them by the state that they went overseas to fight for.
Right.
That's how bad it is in Australia, and it's hard to see the answer. And I've come to the same thought as you, that it will have to get to a revolution, but Australians, we are pathetically apathetic when it comes to the government. What
do you think? I've been used to hearing Australians as like, and maybe it's because I'm thinking about rugby, right? Right. I'm like, where do you think that apathy comes from? Because my understanding of a lot of Australian dudes is like rugged, and that's my media propaganda, right? Crocodile Dundee.
Yes.
Right. What is that? And I don't know if that's an offensive statement.
No.
But like, why is the narrative that these are strong men that are just get it done? And from what you're telling me, they're kind of like laying down to the government.
I think it's an element of the brainwashing that it has occurred, that said Australia is safe because of our gun laws, when in fact the homicide rate was falling before that incident in 96 and continued to fall afterwards. So the numbers aren't reflective of reality, but Australians are just brainwashed into believing that less guns equals less crime. And so Australian men and women who are shooters, we have this society who doesn't like us because they're scared of us, because they're seeing the government and the media portray us as threat. They doxed us in Western Australia. They printed a map on the front page of the newspaper with dots identifying where we lived and color-coded it by pistol, rifle, shotguns. And then they had a break-in a few weeks later and a man was set on fire and his firearm stolen. Yet you have the government say, we're trying to public safety. We're taking away guns to keep you safe. Well, you just doxed us and
made us unsafe.
Yes, made us unsafe because it's a shopping list for criminals.
The government saying we're here to keep you safe is hilariously oxymoronic. That never is the case. Government in America, you know, the whole like, the police are here to protect and serve. They literally have, this is a Supreme Court decision, they have no legal obligation to protect you. A criminal could be robbing somebody and the police officer could sit right there and he has no obligation to protect this person. So like that thought process that they're here to help, it has never been true. It has never been true. From fundamentally the first, gun grab in America, that very first gun grab was the massacre at Wounded Knee. Indigenous people in America. So this, we're here to keep you safe argument is like hilariously oxymoronic. It's just not true. It's just not true. There's never a time where that shit is gonna be true. Maybe I don't have a crystal ball, but historically that has not been true. And what are your next steps? What are you doing to make more Australians see like, hey guys, this isn't really working?
Well, I worked for the Sporting Shooters Association of Australia, which is like your NRA, as a lobbyist for 5 years. I then worked for Australia's first Libertarian Senator, Senator David Leyonhjelm, who's the most pro-gun politician we've ever had. I worked for other Libertarian politicians. I ran for office in in Western Australia after they doxed us. There was a federal election. I didn't get enough of the vote, but I was out there campaigning on guns. I was the only Australian political candidate in history who put my picture holding a gun on posters. So I've been trying to do what I can. I take people to the range because I want to show people, come and have a shot. And when they come and shoot a gun, they walk away smiling. Like, it's so funny to see the mind switch, but they're making it harder for us to do that. They're shutting down ranges left, right and center, saying it's lead poisoning issues. They're doing everything they can in that playbook to get rid of guns and to discourage us from owning guns. So I feel like I'm a lone prophet shouting into the wind, is what my dad calls me. He says I'm an American woman trapped in an Australian's body, and he's like, you should be living in the States, and then he'll come visit and we can shoot big guns together. But it's a hard battle. I feel like we are losing the battle, and it will get to the point in Australia where only the military, police and the security guards for the elite will have guns. That's what we're looking at. And as an American, how does that make you feel hearing that? Because it devastates me.
It's crazy. It's wild. I don't like it's hard for my brain to even. I understand it because I understand the nature of corrupt governments. But I just it's mind-boggling to me, and it's pushing up against some of my programming and understanding that Australians. I thought Australians were tough guys, and that's I think there can be, and I think that there will be, with the work that you're doing. And you got to come to Philly, and I'll give you some tips and tricks.
Come,
of the trade.
let me shoot some big guns.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Awesome.
Yep, no doubt.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I'm so excited to meet you. I've been following you for a long time, and I'm so inspired by your work, honestly. And I love your holistic approach to it too. It's not just about shooting on self-defense. It's the fitness, it's the mindset. It's you are the person responsible for your health and for your family's health. So look after all aspects, not just firearms.
Correct.
So thank you, Maj Toure. You're a bloody legend. And Australians, we need to be more like him. Come on, lads.